you might be thinking of a specific person that this applies to. And you might be thinking, oh yeah, they always do that. Or yeah, like they're definitely guilty of that. And so often we kind of want to change the world, change those around us before we look at ourselves and change ourselves. So you already know how hard it is to go to the gym, to take yourself to the gym consistently, to eat right consistently, right? And that's yourself. And you know that that's something that you want to do or need to do if that is the case. And so imagine how much harder it would be to try and make somebody else change and make them go to the gym and make them eat healthy, right? We can't control that. That's going to be much harder, and it's hard enough to get ourselves to do it. So as we go through this training, just kind of keep with that reminder that, this isn't pointing fingers. This isn't to be used as ammunition against a current significant other that you have, to blame an ex, to put somebody that you're dating in a box, or to somehow mess with your list if you're looking for love, looking for a relationship. This is really going to be about yourself and looking within. And I know that's kind of disappointing sometimes, right? Because it's easier to look outside of us and to help someone else change. But that's not what this training is going to be about. This training is really about looking within and how we can show up as the best version of ourselves in a relationship, to either A, lead as an example and allow that other person to grow with us by leading as example, not by telling them what they're doing wrong and what they should be doing instead. And then 2, just to be aware that it may not be that they're doing anything quote unquote wrong. It just might be that they see the world differently than you do. And so this is also going to be about awareness and how you yourself sees the world and how somebody else might see the world. And neither is better, neither is worse. It is, right? That is just how it is. And so when we know that, we can have more empathy, more compassion, more understanding. And that's really the intent for this training today. So as I mentioned, these 4 factors come from this book. You can grab it. What I love about this book is that it goes through each of these 4 factors, and then it gives very detailed examples for each type, 1 through 9. However, what I love about this book that they say and that I've been learning myself is that really these factors that we talk about today aren't really about type. So we're not going through, type 1 does this, type 2 does this. It's more it's kind of looking at the Enneagram in a different way outside of the types, to give you, again, just an idea of just all the different ways that it can help and all the additional information it can give you outside of just a number. So with that, I mentioned these are the 4 factors we're going to be getting into. So let's jump into factor 1, high levels of psychological health. And what does that mean? Well, that sounds maybe complicated or like a therapy term, but really this is an actual concept in the Enneagram around levels of development. So within our personality, we have these numbers 1 through 9 that give us an idea horizontally. So they're it's like, are we this number? Are we this number? Is this our core desire? Is this our core fear? And so there's some things that we can take in on a horizontal scale. However, once we kind of land on that scale, on that path and kind of zone in on a number, that's not just it. Within that number, once we kind of lock it in, there's also vertical information that we can look at vertically that determines where we are. So we could have, and I've said this before, 10 threes in a room, but based on wings and if they're stressed or if they're living their best life or where they are on this scale of levels of development or psychological health, they all 3 could look very, very different. And so really this is just how each partner is within their personality type. You can be healthy, you could be average, which is where we're going to see the stereotypes of each of the types come out, or you could be unhealthy, which is when, as a coach, it's my job to probably refer that person to a therapist that's getting into some areas that, they're going to maybe need some additional help in, but there's going to be those distinctual levels. And, we tend, and I do this too, tend to see ourselves maybe in better health on that scale that I'm going to show you in just a minute than we really are. And so it's really important that when you're typing yourself, getting your number, and when you're looking at things like your level of development, that you're really honest with yourself, because it doesn't do you any good to lie to yourself. And only you can really decide, where you are on this level of development, level of health. You could take a look at your partner and maybe get an idea of what their range is. But again, this is really about looking within yourself and showing up as the best person, best partner, current partner or future partner. And so taking a look at that. In this book, I also really liked, they listed this bullet point list of here too about other factors of additional health that I love. Somebody who can be objective and self-validating and self-soothing and humility and let's see, what else do I have? Living by principles. And so if you do end up getting this book, they go into details and definitions of what each of those mean and what to look for in a partner. And again, kind of what to strive towards, what to grow into as somebody who wants to be an amazing partner. The other part of this is this visual here, and this is what the Enneagram levels of development looks like. You have a super healthy range, an average range, and an unhealthy range. And this is going to be different than just like you being in a really good mood. This is more about your level of awareness, about where you are, like where your shadows are, where your strengths are, and how aware you are of those things will kind of determine that level of health too. And so you do have to be brutally honest, sometimes painfully. It can be painful, but it only is going to work if you are there. So the authors are saying, okay, the first and one of the most important pieces to look at when it comes to the Enneagram, how to find love, how to find the right person for you, and then how to keep that relationship happy and healthy, is to make sure that you both are in that above average to healthy range for your levels of development, for that psychological health, so that, again, you can have that awareness, compassion, empathy. And actually, when you get into the healthy levels of your number, you can start to look like another number. You can start to look like actually the opposite of the stereotype of your number. So that's, again, why you can't necessarily type somebody off behaviors. It has to be more motive. So like an 8 and is a great example of that. They tend to, according to stereotypes, come across, angry and big and have big feelings and confrontational, right? But in reality, when they climb up the levels of development into a super healthy range, that their big heart starts to show. Like they have one of the biggest hearts on the Enneagram, and that's going to start to come out. And you might think, oh my gosh, that can never be an 8. This is what an 8 I think looks like. And in reality, when they're really healthy, they're going to look a lot different potentially. So keeping that in mind. And these are topics that we're going to be getting into more over the next few weeks, few months. But this is just a taste of these other areas of the Enneagram that you might not be familiar with outside of just your number. The second piece that the author said that's going to play a factor into your relationships. Where is my number here? Where's my slide? This matching subtypes. And subtypes is one of my favorite things. It is a huge help in understanding yourself and your partner for sure. So this would warrant a topic all by itself. It would probably warrant getting into each one of these at different times so that we could really deep dive into those. But for today, I'm just letting you know that these are out there. I'm going to give you a quick overview of this. Within the Enneagram, you can have your number, you can have your wings, and then under your number, you have all 3 of these subtypes inside of you, just like we have all 9 of the numbers inside of us. But there's going to be one that's really dominant. There is going to be a second, and then there's going to be a third number in your stack. But the author is saying when you and your partner can have, just like if you guys can both be in a really healthy place psychologically be in a healthy place for your levels of development, you're going to have a much healthier relationship. Same thing with here. They're saying that if you have matching subtypes, not necessarily can it not work if you don't. It's just probably going to be a little bit easier because your natural instincts, your values are going to be really similar. So when you do have conflict, you'll be able to really understand each other, or you may not have it at all because you're both on the same page. Now, with that said, I'm sure there's a lot of people in really happy and healthy relationships who have different subtypes, but I think the point for me sharing this one with you is just to understand that this is a real thing, and you can use subtypes without even understanding your partner's exact Enneagram type or your Enneagram type for that matter. And the 3 types are going to be something called self-preservation. And this is the one that most people tend to identify with. This is where you're going to be really focused on getting and maintaining physical safety and comfort, things like housing and food and clothing and physical health, money. When you're really functioning in a happy, harmonious, healthy place, you're going to be great at creating a secure environment. You might enjoy doing the shopping, maintaining the house, paying the bills, acquiring useful skills to do things around the house or in your life. When you're dysfunctioning, you're going to be the opposite, right? You're probably your unhealthy tendencies are going to be in that same area, but they're going to look unhealthy. So sleeping disorders, eating disorders, maybe overeating, maybe overstocking up on things, maybe overbuying, over purging, right? So just to be aware of that yourself. And then I do want to just share that if this is you, or this is sounding like maybe your partner, or maybe you're like, oh, this is why it didn't work with my ex. When this subtype is your least developed subtype. So if one of these other 2 that we're going to get into is on top of here, if this is your last one in your stack of 3, attending to life, the basics in life, is not going to come natural to you or to your significant other. So what might come easy to you if you really identify with this self-preservation? It's like, well, of course we're going to stay up with the bills. Of course we're going to stay up with the house. Of course we're going to, have our money in order, have our physical needs taken care of. And you might get frustrated with somebody that is their least developed category. And so they're going to maybe not be able to keep up with the bills as much and let parts of the house go, the lawn go, or whatever. But understanding that person, or the roles might be vice reversed, right? But understanding that is a difference can be huge, and again, give you that empathy, compassion, and understanding. The second type in here is called the sexual subtype. This person is going to be occupied with having these intense connections and intense experiences, and this is not just sexual experiences by any means. This might be, rock climbing, ski jumping, deep conversations, an exciting movie. This is the type that they call the intimacy junkies, and they'll gravitate towards people that they feel magnetized by or magnetized to for the sake of that feeling, for the sake of that connection, versus somebody in a social subtype that we're going to get to in just a minute might gravitate towards a group of people or a person because of their social standing in life. So that's just a difference in that, and we'll get to that in just a second. But the sexual subtype, they're going to have some difficulty pursuing their own projects and taking good enough care of themselves, because subconsciously they're always looking for something outside of them to feel like they're completed, right? And so they're really needing that intimate one-on-one deep connection, or a situation or experience is going to be really important to them. When somebody has this in their least, so if we're ranking these 1, 2, 3, when somebody has this as their third least developed subtype, they're going to have a hard time connecting on that intimate level, right? And it's not going to come natural to them. Not to say that any of these, that person can't learn, that person can't work on. It's just not going to be their natural tendency. So if you're frustrated with your partner because it's like, I just feel like we can't ever have a deep conversation, I don't feel like I really know this person, this might be what's going on, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't, recognize what's going on and kind of work through that. And then the last one is this social subtype, which they're going to be really focused on connecting with a community, connecting with a group, and have lots of interest doing that. They're also going to be pursuing, attention, success, maybe fame, recognition, leadership, appreciation. Being bigger, being a part of something bigger than themselves is also going to be in there. It's going to be important for them to touch base with others in order to feel safe and alive and energized. And so these social subtypes are really going to enjoy interacting with people. But ironically, unlike the sexual subtype that we just talked about, these social subtypes tend to have a lot of friends, tend to spread themselves wide among different groups, but don't tend to go deep. So they tend to struggle with intimacy. So if this is your least developed subtype, if this is third in your ranking, attending social events, having a lot of social commitments, that's not going to feel really good to you. That's not going to come natural to you. So either you, or keeping that in mind, if that is a struggle, a fight that you and your partner tend to have all the time, it might be because there is a mismatch of subtype where you're not necessarily speaking the same language when it comes to what's important, what comes natural to you. And again, that doesn't mean that you're not a good fit. It just means that being aware of what's important to that person versus you, and working through that, having those healthy conversations, having that dialogue, being able to even, put words to the frustration can be hugely helpful too. So this is huge when it comes to relationships, and something we'll definitely be talking more about. The third piece of a third way to use the Enneagram in your relationships is something called the Harmonic Triads, and having them match. And let's see, that is subtypes. Oh my gosh, let's see where these slides are. And this is where kind of your outlook on life comes into play. So you're either going to be a positive outlook person, a reactive outlook, or a competency. Here we go. So it doesn't matter the term harmonic triad match. It just kind of means how you tend to deal with disappointment, pain, conflict. If you were on last week's training, we talked about this a little bit, and this can really again, be an important thing to be aware of in how you handle conflict versus how your partner handles conflict. Or maybe, again, you'll be reflecting on why a relationship ended. You couldn't understand, and maybe now this is going to bring some closure or some understanding of that. So there's three types here. And the first... oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. So the first kind of category, there we go. I was like, not type, category, is this positive outlook. These people have those rosy colored glasses. The glasses have full outlook. if you know your partner's number or your number, you might recognize some of these. So a 9 is going to be saying, okay, there's a problem. Or if there is a problem, a 9 is going to be like, what problem? Like, I don't think there's a problem. A 2 might be saying, sure, there's a problem. You have a problem. I'm here to help. And a 7, that's me over here, might be saying, yeah, there may be a problem, but I'm fine. It's fine. I'm fine. Don't worry. I'm fine. Right? And that can be really frustrating for somebody if you're in one of these other triads. Either it could be frustrating as somebody in the positive outlook triad to be like, gosh, why do you have to be such a downer? Why do you have to see the world in such a glass half empty? Like, where's your rose-colored glasses, right? Why do you have to overreact? Why do you have to make a big deal about this? Why can't we just move on? What's next? Or it might be frustrating for somebody who's not in this to experience somebody in this positive outlook when there's conflict, thinking like, gosh, can't you just be a realist? Like, why are you being so optimistic? We need to be real here, right? So again, this is just putting language, words, thoughts to maybe some reoccurring issues, challenges you have been having in your own relationships or in a current relationship right now. So the second category, and if you're watching this live, as I go through these, you'll have to let me know which one maybe you most identify with, or which one, if you already know which one you are, let me know as we go through these. The second type of, the second category is our emotional reaction group, where when you're in conflict with somebody in this triad, they're going to want you to feel the same way that they feel, right? If they're really mad, they're going to want you to feel really mad with them. They're going to want you to match their emotion to let them know that you're with them, that you support them, right? But if you're in one of these other categories, that may not be your natural reaction. So again, understanding where your person is and where you are can be hugely helpful. So if you know that you're a 6, or you recognize that your partner says one of these, or you say one of these, this might be kind of just a fun exercise to identify where you are, what group you're in versus what group your person is in. Positive all the way, type 9. I am in that. I'm there with you. Yes, as a type 7, I'm like, what? Give me those rose-colored glasses. But for somebody like a 6, they're gonna think maybe, I feel a lot of pressure. I just gotta let off some steam. I need to let you know how I feel, right? A 4 might, and this is the awesome thing I love about 4s too. It's like, I feel really hurt, which is not always easy to admit, but a 4 is going to say something like, I feel hurt and I need to let you know how I feel. I need to express myself. And then an 8 might say something like, I am really angry about this and you're going to know about it. Okay. And that can be so beneficial in a relationship. It can be uncomfortable for one of the other types in one of the other groups to have somebody, express a hard emotion sometimes, like sadness or hurt or frustration or madness. But it can also be really helpful because you don't have to guess what that person is thinking, right? And then you can work it out. You can have a really honest conversation from that place. So, and then the third category is going to be our competency category. And this is going to be our 3s, our 1s, and our 5s. And these people here are really focused on, I just finished up my Enneagram certification with the Enneagram University, and our instructor said, this is a category that you're going to hear. It's data, not drama. So unlike the first group where it's positive outlook, they don't care if it's positive or it's negative. Unlike our emotional group, they're not going to be worried about emotions. They're going to be looking at the problem very logically, very analytical, from a data place, which can be frustrating maybe if you're in one of the other groups, right? So if you're a 3, or if you're with a 3, they're going to be looking for the most efficient solution. Okay, we just need to get to work to find this efficient solution. If you're a 1, you're going to be thinking, I'm sure that we can solve this as sensible, mature adults, which I'll be honest with you, I hate this response. It makes sense, but I hate this response, right? But again, just knowing that that's how your person thinks, or they think differently than you, can be helpful. And then a 5 is going to be thinking, gosh, there's a number of different issues here. I just need time to think about it. And they're going to need longer to process. Whereas somebody in a different category might be able to have a conversation in that moment or in 5 minutes. It might take somebody else, like a 5, a few hours to process, to understand. Maybe they need to sleep on it, right? And just by talking about where each other are, how you handle conflict, how you process challenges, disappointment, emotions, and communicating what you need and having that conversation with your partner can be huge. And having healthy conflict, conversations around conflict, which is going to come up. It's just a matter of how you deal with it. And then the fourth category here, we're wrapping up, guys, is it isn't going to be as huge as the others. This connection line that we're going to talk about, a complementary connection arrow is what the authors were calling this, or connection line, which is also called arrows. And we've talked about this before around like, where does your specific type go in stress, and where do you go when you're living your best life? And those are your arrow numbers. And so the author is suggesting here that it's not necessarily who you're most compatible with. If you have an arrow to another number, it's actually that you're opposites most likely, and that you would be a great complement for each other. So they gave the example of a 7 and a 1. So a 7 has an arrow to a 1. And, a 7 could really balance out a 1 by reminding that 1 to have fun. And there's not always a right way to do it. There doesn't always have to be a routine or a plan for everything. Whereas a 1 might be able to help a 7 in a relationship by, creating healthy boundaries and healthy routines and structure so that they can, thrive and do the things that they want to do, versus, I can speak to this as a 7, sometimes being all over the place. So that's what they mean here by a connection arrow line. Now, that doesn't mean that if right now your person is is a 4 and you're a 5 and you don't have an arrow, it's doomed. It's not at all. That's just another part to be aware of when it comes to your type and the Enneagram, and understanding strengths. I don't even want to say weaknesses, just strengths and shadows of each of the numbers, and where you can kind of complement that relationship and really have a super solid, healthy, happy relationship, because you guys complement each other so well. And just knowing where to take the conversation sometimes too can help. Like another arrow is like a 6 and a 9. And, a 6 is somebody who has a backup plan for everything. And your 9s are going to be kind of in that positive outlook. They're not necessarily going to be thinking about all the things that can go wrong. And so they might balance that person out. 6s tend to self-doubt a lot, whereas 9s can see kind of the possibility in all things. And so that might be a really great match, a really great complement to one another. So that's all that's meaning by that right there. If you have questions on any of these 4 things that we talked about, I wanted to go through these a little bit quicker, actually, but I know we still went through those pretty quick. Let me know. This is my favorite thing in the world to talk about, and I would love to hear from you for future trainings. Different topics, things to go deeper on. I do want to answer a couple of quick questions. So last week when I did a training on making decisions, I asked, does anybody have questions around the Enneagram and in general? This question came up last week, and then it came up 3 more times when I asked questions about love and the Enneagram. And actually, let's see, that's not it actually, but that's part of it. It was this: how do you get your significant others to type themselves? I can't figure it out. So this kind of goes to that question that I just accidentally showed you accidentally just showed you before this. So the thing with these is that, kind of going back to what we initially talked about with this quote right here, is that, we all think about changing the world or other people and forget to think about changing ourselves. And so with the Enneagram, it's really just a tool for yourself and for you to be able to grow, and maybe you're living your best life, maybe you're being your best self, whatever that looks like, and you're going to be an inspiration for your partner. Maybe you mention it to them, and if they're against it, then that's fine. You just, you do you, and hopefully they'll come along. You did a great job, Sarah. Oh, thank you, lady. I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, you can't type anybody else because only they know what motivates them. I do have a 2-question, 5-minute or less quiz that will get them close to their number, hopefully narrow it down to 1, 2, maybe 3. If that's something you want to share with them, if that's something they'd be willing to do, that is in my feed, literally called 2-question Enneagram test. So you can absolutely do that. To get the ball rolling. The other question was, let's see, how does the Enneagram and the 5 languages of love overlap? I love the 5 languages of love. And, the 5, that's a great tool to use in relationships too. I think everybody has heard of that at some point. The difference with the 5 languages versus the Enneagram is that the 5 languages is going to be more behavior based. You're going to see somebody doing acts of service. You're going to hear somebody giving those words of affirmation or physical touch. Whereas with the Enneagram, it's less about the behavior and more about the why. So you could have a 2 that does all of those, or you could have a 7 that does all of those, or an 8. But the reason why they are doing the acts of service is going to be a little bit different than for each type. And what they prefer is just going to be how they prefer to express that is going to be based on lots of different things. A lot of that actually might be based on that the subtypes that we talked about in the second factor, that the self-preservation, social, sexual subtypes, and how that gets expressed. So again, there's so much that goes into our number, but the 5 languages of love is a great tool, and it definitely, it definitely is a great complement. Maybe not an overlap, but a great complement. And then let's see, I had one more question. Let's see. Any types that should definitely avoid each other. Oh, I forgot to say this at the beginning too, by the way. So this is not like a horoscope where the horoscope will say like, oh, these are the best matches based on, your birth date and all this stuff. There is no best type and there's no worst match. Best matches or worst matches. That doesn't exist. It has a lot to do with your levels of development, your psychological health, right? Understanding your values, understanding their values. So it's less about your actual type. And in my opinion, if we had to pick any of these, it would also be that level of health, where you are. Because if somebody's in an unhealthy, even if you're, let's say the best match in the world was like, oh, it's between, a 3 and an 8, power couple. But if that 8 is super healthy and the 3 is in an unhealthy range, there's going to be a lot of problems. And it's not going to be because of their Enneagram type. It's going to be because of this level of psychological health, levels of development. So that's really more important than the actual type.